Well, that didn't work out very well. Hold, please. Let's try this again. All right. In a world where one man has technical difficulties. Let's try it again, people. What do you say? How about now? Maybe? Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, and of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett. And I am, of course, robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations, episode number 497. And, still working on the other camera issues, trying to feverishly get this place rocking and rolling and ready for the 500th episode, whatever form that might be. And first of all, before I get into this topic, I just got to show something. So, as many of you know, our budding German filmmaker, producer, Dieter Bastian, and obviously I'm thinking he's a writer and he's a producer, and his directing cohort, Patrick Keller, are they going to be the new Imagine? Are they going to be like Ron Howard and Brian Grazer? Who knows? All I know is that I'm happy to host their movies. But one of the great things about my budding friendship with Dieter is he sends me physical media, because I am, of course, the pharaoh of physical media. But I would like to show you all the box that arrived today from DHL. Here's what it looked like. I'm sure when Dieter packed it, it was probably squared off. Like, I don't know what's in here, but it looks a little bit worse for wear. Kind of like the Constellation in the episode The Doomsday Machine. So, obviously, all I need to do is, open it up and see what's in here. And let's do it together, shall we? Although there's some... Dieter did a good job packing this. I don't quite know what was in here, but yeah, this was doubly packed. This looks a little accordioned up. I don't know what that means or what's here. Oh, you know what it is? It's a Saarbrücken. It's a cup that actually, this time the cup survived, ladies and gentlemen. This time Dieter's cup survived even with such an onslaught. This is German ingenuity at its finest. Actually, London, Los Angeles, Rio, Paris, Tokyo, New York, and Saarbrücken. Saarbrücken, Deutschland, ladies and gentlemen. And this survived. Although, I now can drink this instant coffee that Dieter sent me. So I've got the instant coffee to go in this. But what is this? This is a shot glass of a coffee cup. I'm from Seattle, man. You got to lead me up. But thank you for that, Dieter. It did not get destroyed. Here's a pen. A pen I can use. I can always use more pens. They disappear. So I guess this took the brunt. And look at this. Print Planet. I don't know what Print Planet is. This looks like Haribo Bears. And, of course, a coffee stir. So this is fantastic. Now, I don't know if this is one of Dieter's letters. I will look in here. No, I think it's a receipt. I'll save that for later. But it looks like this caught the brunt of whatever happened to this package. Well, I don't know if somebody was angry or took something out on it, but it looks like it looks like what else is in here was spared because of the packing of this coffee cup. So Dieter, look at this, man. This is pretty awesome. Is this Turbo Media? I think it is. This is of course the great Prince film. Even though I just tore the thing. Sign of the Times, the concert movie. You know I love Prince. This is a recent release. Sign of the Times, the concert film. in a media book, which looks freaking amazing. Of course, dog treats. Now, no wonder when I had this box, Gilbert and Tallulah were freaking out. They loved the dog treats that Dieter sent before. Apparently, they could smell them through this box. I don't know. The Germans must have special dog treat powers. Ooh, and Dieter sent 2 sets of dog treats. Wow, Romeo dog treats. So thank you, Dieter. I appreciate that. Now this is very interesting. So in France, they released this. I hope this transfer is as good as you read. Fingers crossed. The new movie version opens in theaters as planned. Dieter, this is a new version of David Lynch's Dune that was released in France. It supposedly is from a brand new 4K restoration with a new 5.1 mix. We shall see. I am curious. I didn't know. Wow. Wow. Okay, as everyone knows, I didn't even know that this was coming. I don't think Dieter told me this is coming. This is why I love him so much. This is a slipcase version of Roman Polanski's The Ninth Gate. And we all know that's, wow, this is amazing. We all know that Swag Props, Cal, does a version of The Ninth Gate. I'm very happy to have this. I did not know it existed. What a cool thing. And then finally, I have no idea why. Actually, I do know why. Dieter sent this to me, and this is hilarious. As we all know, Dieter loves J-Lo. Or, pardon me, J-Law. Not J-Lo, J-Law. Jennifer Lawrence, he has an obsessive fascination with the Hunger Games films. Now, he sent me this J-Law movie that I've never even seen, much less heard of. Selma Blair is in it, Jennifer Lawrence is in it, and Chloe Grace Moretz is in it. All right, I'll watch this. Now, it's called The Poker House. Now, why is this significant? I'll tell you why it's significant, because you know who directed it? Lori Petty. Well, Dieter, he was worried. I've got my coffee cup. I've got my stirrer. I don't have any water. Otherwise, I would have made a cup of coffee right now. But I want to thank you, my German godfather, all the way from Deutschland, Saarbrücken, Deutschland. I want to thank you for an awesome box of goodies. Now, this is an incredible box of goodies, and I'm certainly going to do this. But, man, I didn't even know they had this awesome slipcase version of The Ninth Gate. I love this movie. And, by the way, Roman Polanski failed in his appeal to get back into the Motion Picture Academy. They denied him today. He was denied. But I was not denied from his movie, The Ninth Gate. So there you go. Very excited about that. Wojciech Kilar's score. I got Prince. I would say this is a good haul today. Thank you so very much. Now, I was thinking, I got to talk about... So yesterday, I mentioned that I had a professional setback. Very disappointing news. It's nothing it's ultimately it's not bad. It was disappointing. Something I hoped would happen didn't happen, and I'm not gonna lie. It put a damper on my spirit, but it was not unexpected, and it was not the end of the world. And I can't really say exactly what it was, but it had something to do with something I've talked about a lot on the show that I hope was going to happen. That isn't now going to happen. But you got to keep going. And it got me thinking. And it got me thinking about back in 1993. I want to say 93. Back in 1993, when I was working on the Full Moon movie Arcade with Peter Billingsley, I over the holiday season in 1993, I didn't have a lot of money. I was pretty depressed, and I basically was in my apartment but from Christmas. I didn't go anywhere for Christmas. I was kind of stuck here, and I didn't want my parents to know that I was in dire financial straits, so I didn't tell them. And so I basically stayed here for the holidays, through Christmas and New Year's, and I didn't even leave my apartment for like 2 weeks, except to like venture out to get food. And I basically just stayed at home and watched movies, and I was sort of in a very depressive state. But I'm like, ultimately, after a couple of days went by, and I was, watching movies, I was also reading books, and I read a short story by a Canadian fantasy author named Charles DeLint, and the short story was called The Sacred Fire. It was like a 10-page short story. And I was just thinking, so Peter Billingsley and I had edited this movie together, and we were making... Peter Billingsley is the kid that stars in A Christmas Story. So he and I have been working together. He also executive produced Iron Man. And, we were doing music videos and industrials and whatever we could to sort of break out and start making films. So I was depressed and stuff in my apartment. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use these feelings of depression because you can wallow. I think there's an impulse that you get caught up in your depression, and in a way that it's sort of soothing. But I'm like, to me, I'm not a depressive. I don't get depressed, and it was annoying that I was feeling depressed. So I read this short story, and I'm like, we should make this short story into a short film. So I sat down and I adapted it. I adapted Charles DeLint's The Sacred Fire. Now, I didn't call an agent. I didn't own this short story. I just adapted it more as an exercise. And when it was done, I sent a copy to Peter. And I said, I don't know if I sent it to him. Maybe I didn't email it to him. Maybe I waited till after the holidays were over. So I wrote the script, and I figured we could go make it. Like, we could make it cheap, just as an exercise. And he could star in it, even though he's probably too young to play the lead role. But I figured, So that's what we did. So I gave him the script, and he read it, and he's like, well, this is pretty good. We should go do this. Because we were just doing anything we could to work. So we did. And we went out, and we rented equipment. We had some people help us. We got a few actors that were not us. Him and I were both in the movie. And we went out and shot this movie. And I want to say we shot it in January of 94. And we shot this short film, and we edited it. We transferred the footage, and we cut it on video. 3/4 inch, I think. And so we had this film. And I sent it in to the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films. And we actually won an award. We won the Golden Scroll Award of Merit for 1 month in I don't know I forget what month it is. So we now had an award-winning short film. And so I took the award-winning short film. There's not much you could do with a short film. I mean, you could send it to festivals, but it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't good enough, I didn't think, for festivals. But I was looking around like, maybe there's people that take short films and do something with them. And I found a distribution company, a video distribution company. And I don't remember if somebody referred me to them or I found them in like Film Threat Video Magazine. I don't remember. Oh, by the way, I did submit the film to Film Threat, the Film Threat Video Guide, and they reviewed it in the Film Threat Video Guide, and it got a favorable review. So then, as I put my glasses on, I found this video company, and I don't even remember, Millennium Video. And lo and behold, I don't know if I read something about this, but they were looking for short genre films to put together as part of a package. Now, at the same time, in addition to my film, our film, The Sacred Fire, based on Charles DeLint's story, my buddy Eric Wallace, who is now the executive producer, he's the showrunner on The Flash right now, he had a short film that he'd made that I thought was pretty interesting called Dark Faith. So I contacted this company and I said, hey man, not only do we have our short film, but another buddy of mine has another pretty cool short film, and maybe you'd be interested in taking a look at our short films. So it turns out that they looked at them both, and the video company said, we like these. We're going to distribute them. And I don't know if they gave us a couple of bucks or whatever. I mean, we didn't care because, oh my God, our movies are going to be released by a distribution company. So what Millennium Video did at the time was put it out. They put it out on a VHS tape with 2 other movies. So there's a total of 4 short sci-fi and horror films. And they were on this tape, this VHS tape, Midnight Follies. So Midnight Follies, there it is. There's the tape. This is actually, I have 2 copies left in VHS. I've never cracked this open. I've left this, and no one's ever seen this short. I really should see if my VHS machine works and crack this open and put it up on the channel. So this idea, oh, and then, by the way, there's actually more of this story. So because the film came out, they wanted us to make another short, and they were willing to pay $50,000 for our next short. So we had called up Charles DeLint's agent and sent him the movie, and we had another story called Small Deaths that we actually went out and shot. Much bigger movie. We finished it, and almost finished it. And then Charles DeLint changed his agent, and the agreement that we'd made with Charles DeLint and his agent, the new agent called up and said we no longer had a deal, and we couldn't do anything with Small Deaths. So this much bigger, more extensive movie, a few other things happened. So the sequel, even though we spent a lot more money on it, never went anywhere. And there's more to that story, but it doesn't really apply to the story that I'm telling. But we did get a deal, a $50,000 deal to make the second short. But the point of me telling this story to you is that I was in a place that it was not so good. I wasn't feeling so good, didn't have any money, feeling a bit sorry for myself, and I literally just decided to write this script. And then, pushed it forward, and we kept going, and we made the film, and it won an award at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, and then we got distribution for it, and it actually came out. I mean, yes, it's not exactly a video company that was well known, but they had ad materials for it, and it came out. And by the way, so did Eric Wallace's, a buddy of mine's film as well, because at the same time, I've always believed that a high tide raises all ships. So why would I hold this close to the vest when I could also help out a friend? And then it turns out that 50% of this tape, I was responsible for the content. So then I've now forged a relationship with this distribution company, and we ended up making a second film. So the point of this story is that inaction gets you nowhere. But action, you never know where it's going to take you. And I'm not saying it's always going to, I mean, this is one story. I don't know what will happen. I can't speak to what's happening now, but I will know. Dieter would know this better than I would, but there's a quote from Goethe, the philosopher. And I don't remember any of the quote, not like the McCoy quote that I paraphrase, but basically the gist of this quote is, when you actually decide on a course of action and you apply yourself, you actually say it's a task or it's something you want to accomplish. When you really start to apply yourself and energy is put forward towards that goal, the tumblers of the universe start to move. And that more often than not, once you have started to move those tumblers, meaning when things start to happen and the tumblers of fate or whatever start to move, more often than not, they will click into place. If, in fact, your wherewithal or your desire to accomplish this goal is genuine. And you have to put in the time and the elbow grease and the energy and all that. And it all starts to move. And this is kind of what happened with Sacred Fire. I read this short story. Now, look, could we have gotten in trouble? Sure. I mean, we didn't have the rights for it. We went back and got them after the fact so we could release it on tape, and Charles DeLint was great. And I haven't spoken with Mr. DeLint or talked with his agent in 25 years. But this actually did happen. And it was something, and in my career, while I have never been really commercially successful, not certainly to make myself rich, I have constantly been able to move these things and have stuff happen. There's always been something, like I've been content. Would I like to be rich? Yes. Would I like to be commercially successful? Absolutely. Who wouldn't be? Because when you're commercially successful in the entertainment business, it just makes your projects easier. If I had more commercial success behind me, the setback that we had yesterday would not have happened. And it's because I don't have as much, what do you call it? Juice. behind me as I probably could have or should have or would have, whatever, if I'd made different decisions. But at the same time, I've quite enjoyed the things I get to do because you get to make things. And this, I've always looked at this as an example because this was something that I basically conjured up from nothing. And in a way, we talk about the Hills Run Red. The Hills Run Red was sort of born, this opportunity fell into our laps. This company from New York, Fever Dreams, comes and visits me in my office, and I say, okay, we'll do this. And I get Dave Scow to come on board and Dave Parker directing. And we go out and we make this trailer they asked us to make. And then people I knew, you push it forward. You find yourself at a meeting at Warner Brothers. These kinds of things happen. And yeah, do you have to know people? Sure. Do you have to have relationships, long-standing work relationships? It's not like, in terms of Bryan Singer, I'd already made 4 projects with him that were successful. But even those, like, I asked my boss that when I was working on Lord of the Rings, I'm like, can I start my own? He suggested I start my own production company. But it's all, pushing forward and making stuff happen. Now, the thing is, just doing one thing that's not going to work for you. You have to be doing a bunch of things. You have to have your tentacles out there, and you never know when one thing that you're doing is going to mix with another thing. And it's not easy. And sometimes it takes years and years and years of developing networks and tendrils and whatever. But if you're not doing anything, nothing's going to happen. And so I was thinking about that as I suffered this blow yesterday. I'm like, okay, I've got a number of different projects that I actually, a couple in this computer that are just sort of laying fallow, but stuff that I've been working on some of it for a very long time, some not so long. But I'm like, okay, I still have stuff happening, there's a Netflix show that I've been working on. Yeah, small capacity, but still working on it. As a matter of fact, I will be doing some more work on it after I get off this show. But there's stuff happening. Hills Run Red came out this year, or on Blu-ray, as you all know, back in June. So there's stuff happening. What you do is you use the momentum. Once you have this stuff out, you're like, yes, I just released this, so this came out, And I was thinking about Dieter Bastian and Patrick Keller, who made The Secret Exchange. They made this short film. They went out one weekend. I've never met Dieter, and yet they made it. They sent me this film. I'm like, this is pretty cool. And you put it up on YouTube, and more than 1,000 people, I think it's up to like 1,500 views. Now, is that a lot on YouTube? No. But it's 1,500 more views than you would have had if you hadn't made the movie. And if they make another version, like Patrick and Dieter are going to make it into a trilogy. And I'll put those up happily. So who knows what's going to happen? You never know. But the fact is they're doing this thing. Like, they could have sat home one Saturday and drank beer instead, but they went out and made this little movie. They sent it to me. I'm like, well, this is cool. I put it up. So you just never know what's going to happen when you put energy out there. BL Alley. One day, BL Alley sends me a video that's a parody of me, of this show. But it's pretty funny, and suddenly, now it's a series of parodies. There's going to be more. I believe there will be 2 BL Alley videos tomorrow on this channel, one in front of this show and one in front of Whining About Movies. So, I don't know. BL Alley is an author. He's got his stuff up on Amazon. I don't know if he ever wanted to be a filmmaker, but suddenly he is. And he hasn't just made one, he's made multiple films. And I think that's pretty cool. And who knows where that will take him. You just never know. You never know. But I do know one thing. If you don't do it, nothing will happen. So it's very funny. So today, as I was thinking about all of these things, I have no idea why this popped up. But this article, I wasn't even doing any Google searches. But I came across this article that was on Medium. And it's in a section called The Entrepreneur's Handbook. And it's a Steve Jobs. This is an article written by Michael Thompson. He wrote it on June 17th. Well, it was published on June 17th. And the article says, according to Steve Jobs, this one thing separates the doers from the dreamers. And I probably never would have clicked on this, but because I was thinking about all these things, I did. I clicked on this article. And again, Goethe or whatever, the tumblers of the universe, not that I've committed to doing something, but my response to setbacks of any kind in my life has always been, what can I do to alleviate those through something? Because you can't. There's always something to do. So here's this article. And I could just jump into it, but I want to read a little bit of it. Look at that picture of Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs was 12 years old, he wanted to build a frequency counter, but he was lacking some of the necessary parts to complete the project. Instead of giving up, however, he did the only thing he could think of. He looked Bill Hewlett of Hewlett-Packard, Bill Hewlett's number up in the phone book, and he gave him a call. To Steve's surprise, Bill, the co-founder of Hewlett-Packard, personally answered the phone. After Steve explained who he was and what he was up to, Bill agreed to give him some spare parts for his project. Not only that, but he also gave Steve a summer job at Hewlett-Packard, putting nuts and bolts together on the assembly line that built frequency counters. While sharing this story in 1994 with the Silicon Valley Historical Association, Jobs stressed the importance of asking for what you want. Most people never pick up the phone. Most people never call and ask. And that's what separates sometimes the people who do things from the people from those who just dream about them. You got to act. You got to be willing to fail. You've got to be willing to crash a burn. With people on the phone or starting a company, if you're afraid you'll fail, you won't go very far. If you don't ask, you won't get. Throughout my career, I've worked with successful entrepreneurs, coaches, and creatives. These people are scattered all over the globe, and they come in many different shapes and sizes. However, like Jobs, the one characteristic they all have in common is they know that no one is coming to save them, and that it is up to them and only them to go after what they want. When most people think about taking a chance, they paralyze themselves thinking about all the negative things that could happen. They allow their self-talk to be flooded with what-if statements like, what if I get rejected? What if they laugh at me? What if I'm not ready? The people who make an impact, however, silence their doubts by focusing on the potential positive outcomes. What if they say yes? What if they know a friend who can help me? What if this is my big break? They do this because they know the old adage, good things come to those who wait, is out of date. The people who get what they want have the balls to ask for what they want. Ask yourself who around you is moving forward. Steve Jobs and Elon Musk both got started in their careers by asking for what they wanted. Jobs wanted a few spare parts and ended up with a summer job. Musk cold-called people he wanted to meet, and after getting on the radar of Peter Nicholson, a top executive at the Bank of Nova Scotia, he was offered an internship where he went on to pitch Nicholson ideas. It's easy to look at the change makers like Jobs and Musk and say to yourself, well, it's easy for them, they're geniuses. To encourage you to put down your doubts and pick up the phone, below are a few stories from people you walk by every day who decided their dreams were more important than the moment of potential embarrassment. Now, I'm going to put this article into the live chat, and you can read it and read these stories. But, I was thinking about that. It just got me thinking about the fact that my go-to position when something bad happens is usually to think about something else that I could be doing to alleviate my feelings of annoyance or anger or frustration or whatever. I'm like, all right, so this didn't work out. But that's just one of, I know that for every one thing that I've had go in this business, in Hollywood, in the film business, 30 things have not gone. And that's just that ratio. It's probably even more than that, but you just have to assume that that's the case. I mean, I was writing, I went and got the option on a novel. After I finished Free Enterprise, I wrote the script for it. Then I found two female producers who also were looking for the book, but then they came to me when they found out that I had written the screenplay. They liked my screenplay, and we spent a long time trying to get it made. We couldn't get it made. The script got good coverage, and one of them wound up marrying Gavin Newsom. So there you go. But still, you did it, and you meet people, and it is only through action that you get a reaction. And I know it's easy for some people. It's easy for me to say that. I know you have to have personalities or whatever to be that way, and most people maybe are not that way. But what's interesting about this day and age is we have more access at our fingertips. If you want to share your art or make things, Swag Props, Cal, he's in Malaysia, and the man is making prop replicas of books from movies. Now, I don't know what possessed him to do that in the first place, but if anyone makes prop replica books from movies, his are the best. His the best. I don't even know how, maybe because he was part of this channel, and now I actually have 2 of his books, thanks to his generosity and all that, which is amazing. But I know that a friend of mine bought one of his Grail diaries from him, and, because of me, and you just never know. You never know where in this day and age when we're globally connected and you have YouTube and you've got Etsy and you've got all eBay, whatever, you've got all these ways to connect with people that it doesn't matter what it is you want to do. I mean, obviously you have to manage your expectations. I can't go out and say, I'm going to go write the next Academy Award winning screenplay. I mean, you could say that, but how about writing the next screenplay that actually gets made? I mean, that, or better yet, you're going to go make it or whatever. I always think that's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. So I was just thinking about that. I mean, we're living in a time where basically it feels like Groundhog Day for me. Every day it's the same. I don't really go anywhere except to the grocery store. I come out here, I talk on YouTube, I work at this desk, I move things around in the Robservatory. I'm going through everything I own, throwing stuff away, streamlining my life. It really has felt, who knows when production's going to come back. But everything I've been doing, it has become rather monotonous. However, Elizabeth and I started more YouTube shows. It's brought us. We've been having fun together doing those. So you have to take your situation and do something that will benefit you. And there are so many tools and things that are now available on an international scale that, hey, why not? I don't know what those things are going to be. I think about Jason Inman and Ashley Robinson. They are comic book fans, big geeks. They used to make a Star Trek fan film series called The Red Shirt Diaries, which was great. Now they're self-publishing their own, well, they crowdfund their own comic, Jupiter Jet. They're doing their second volume of that. It's a great series. Who knows where that's going to go? They just thought it up and did it. And I think that in this day and age, we have that ability. And at times like this, when there's all kinds of craziness going on, I mean, when I watch videos of 3 cops, I mean, I'm not going to get political or get angry, but watching a man being put into a car by police officers where he's unarmed and he ends up getting shot anyway, makes me want to reach through the computer screen and throttle somebody. I don't understand why everybody is so quick. I understand it's a terrifying job, and I am an advocate of our boys in blue, the police. I just don't understand why, in this day and age, everybody is so quick to pull a firearm out. That should seem to me to be the last resort. But it's maddening to live in this world and seeing this kind of stuff happen. But on the other hand, there's so much interesting things going on, especially like in the YouTube space, all these people from all over the planet making cool shit. You look at it and you're like, wow, this is, in a way, as I've become part of, being a YouTuber and looking at other YouTubers' stuff, there's a lot of really interesting things out there that people are doing and making shows and creating content. And a lot of people still think that, I still get a lot of comments saying you're just panhandling on the internet. Well, I mean, these are still shows. How much is this show worth to you every day? I don't know. It's still work for me. Like, I don't just turn on the camera and start talking. I think about things. I look at things. I make my little opening and closing graphics. Some days I don't have anything I want to talk about, and I'm like, I can't go on, but I'll still go on. Now I get more letters than I've ever got before, so I feel I'm obligated to the audience. Look, if you guys write letters to me, that's the same thing. Somebody sat down and composed a letter and sent it to me. I mean, I find that to be amazing. I find it amazing when I say, hey, I've opened this up to videos, but I don't get deluged with videos. And I understand a lot of people are bashful or shy, but whether it's Torrin Atkinson or whether it's BL Alley or whether it's Roberto Suarez or the people that have sent me videos, they're worth sharing. And the effort that takes some effort. I still don't know how BL Alley did his effect shot where he passed off a glass of milk to himself. Pretty impressive. And although tried to stump me, he's like, he mentions Akir, the planet Akir, in a letter and things. Did you get my Battle Beyond the Stars reference? I'm like, bruh, come on. Sador of the Malmori. I'm only in this for Sador. I want his head. Well, you're welcome to it. I probably know Battle Beyond the Stars verbatim. But anyway, still, even on this show, people are making an effort. And I find that to be uplifting. And that was something that was a byproduct of doing the show that it never occurred to me that, wow, that people could send me letters and that I would actually enjoy getting them. Like this one that I got today. Today from the chairman, Jeffrey Mao. Dear Rob, and all of the Robservers of the Post-Geek Singularity. Once again, it is I, the chairman, coming to you not with a review, as I still have to finish watching Flash Gordon, though I don't think I'll write a review on it since it's been reviewed by you and the Ace and others have written in on it, but with a bit of news or thoughts. So, as is expected, when the pandemic hit, lots of plans and projects got put to the side, the back burner, if you will. And some news was forgotten or not noticed. One of them was that Universal and Blumhouse were planning to adapt a full-length novel version of Who Goes There, the novella written by John W. Campbell Jr. and the basis for both The Thing from Another World and The Thing and The Thing. Okay, lots of things, and we will forget about the last one. The background to all of this is that Campbell had originally intended to write his story as a full-length novel, but edited it down to a short story or novella length and published it as Who Goes There. The manuscript or copy of the novel-length version was only found in 2018 and is titled Frozen Hell. It has since been published and is available on Amazon for Kindle and print. Like B.L. Alley's books are on Amazon. Go check them out. Needless to say, it's obvious to everyone that this would make a great opportunity to readapt, reboot, reimagine The Thing. I was watching a new video from Mr. H Reviews, just posted today, and he was reporting on an article that reported that John Carpenter, of course, the director of 82's The Thing, was going to be working on it in some unknown capacity. Mr. H did correctly point out that this is not new news per se and referred back to the previous story that I mentioned before, which was from the end of January of this year. I suppose at this point it's a complete speculation as to what form this adaptation of Frozen Hell would take. I've not read the book, but I'm presuming that it is set in the present day of 1938. It might be fascinating to set the film during that time period and imagine how an isolated crew of characters would deal with such a creature. I don't know about you, Rob, but I am kind of hoping that it isn't a direct reboot. Is the word reboot even appropriate here? Of the 1982 film, as there would be no need to have to tie this adaptation to Carpenter's film. I guess that Carpenter's involvement is only because he directed the most well-known and loved version and could certainly provide insight into the overall story direction. Or maybe it's just, hey, John, here's the script or the treatment. Read it and let us know what you think. Sort of as a show of respect to him. You know what would be a really great respect to John Carpenter? And this is me talking out of my ass, and I don't know. But John Carpenter, when he had his Alive deal that had an output with Universal, he made Prince of Darkness and They Live. I don't know if John Carpenter wants to get behind the camera again, and I know a lot of people can say Village of the Damned and Ghosts of Mars and The Ward and Vampires might not have been classic Carpenter. But it sure would be nice, after all the money that Blumhouse has made off things like, a Halloween, and how much they're probably going to make off Halloween Kills, throw the man a bone. Give him $10 million. Give John Carpenter $10 million. Sandy King will produce, his wife, and let John Carpenter make another movie. Another Panavision, widescreen genre film. I'd love that. Anyway. Hey, John, here's the script or the treatment. Read it and let us know what you think, sort of a show of respect to him. While I'm sure a lot of people would initially groan at news of yet another reboot of The Thing, I think in this case, it's different enough source material and almost doubling down of the original short story that a new adaptation sounds warranted. The producers of the film would be justified in saying that this is a completely new adaptation because the book itself is being sold as just that, its own thing. It's quite rare, actually, to get this longer, expanded version, and apparently it was literally found sitting in the publisher's warehouse somewhere. The discovery of this version sounds like the basis of a good story of its own. Could you imagine if we had found out that there was an unknown, original, longer version of a classic movie that was sitting around in a vault somewhere that we had thought was lost, only to discover it 60 years later? Are you talking about Psycho? Thanks, Jeff. I just saw that you and John are discussing this on his show today. I know, isn't that crazy? But it is a new story, so we were discussing it. Anyway, I forgot. I didn't even realize I'm still on this camera angle when I should be on this camera angle, so my lovely face can be that much closer to the camera. But, yeah, I'm telling you, I like this letter, Jeff. And why not? I mean, I think this kind of thing is terrific. We live in a world now where who knows what's going to happen on a daily basis in terms of being an imagination connoisseur. You just never know what you're going to get. You never know what you're going to get. You never know what cool stuff is coming down the pike. I mean, Carnival Row Season 2 wrapped. They were able to shoot it and finish it. I liked Carnival Row Season 1. It wasn't as perfect as, say, The Boys Season 1, but based on a script that I read 20 years ago. Now we've got a second season of a TV series. You just never know what's going to happen. You never know. So, yeah, I got a lot of letters today. You never know how many letters you're going to get, but I got a lot. And the first letter today, would you believe, the first letter that I'm going to read today is, of course, hang on. I just had it, and I clicked off of it. The first letter is from Ian Samuels, ladies and gentlemen. Ian Samuels leads us off today. Rob and fellow Robservationists, I believe that the 80s were a golden age for movies. Pretty much every year we got great summer blockbusters. I also believe that following this, the 90s were a golden age of TV. We got huge series such as Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, Farscape, Stargate SG-1, and many others. But because of the deluge of great TV, some gems got buried and didn't get the love they deserved. First, I would like to suggest Erie, Indiana, a series I absolutely loved. It didn't get the success it deserved, while others, which I felt were poor imitations, got successful long runs. Both Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark got multiple seasons, where we only got one of Erie, Indiana. Perhaps it was my age, but I felt that Goosebumps was far too childish. Are You Afraid of the Dark had an interesting premise with a group of kids sitting around a campfire telling ghost stories, but it was an interest that did not sustain me through even the first season. But Erie, Indiana, following the strange goings-on in one town, was really intriguing to me, and I felt that the stories were well written and well told. My second offering is Dark Skies. Following on from the success of The X-Files, Dark Skies was in essence The X-Files in the 60s. But this was not a Chris Carter creation and wasn't linked to The X-Files. Dark Skies Mulder and Scully are John Leonard and Kim Sayers as they investigate an alien group called the Hive, as they are shown to be involved in such historical events as the assassination of JFK. Even the aliens known as the Greys, who have been visiting Earth since the 1940s, are being hunted by the Hive. But not only do Leonard and Sayers have the Hives to face off against, but also a secret government agency which seems to have mixed motives, seemingly at times wanting to protect the population of the planet from the alien threat to gain alien technology for their own needs. A government agency called Majestic 12. The two-part pilot was directed by Texas Chainsaw Massacre director Tobe Hooper. They also had episodes directed by Star Trek The Next Generation and DS9 director Rick Colby, as well as Smallville director David Jackson. Despite the fascinating premise, it never reached the heights of The X-Files, only getting one season. Two series that I feel were hidden gems of the 60s or 90s golden age. Also, I feel that both are still worth seeking out and checking out today, like many of the greats of that era of television. Ian. I like it when Ian writes letters that are deep dives or remind us of things we might have missed. Those are good letters. Stubble McShave is here. Hi, Rob, a.k.a. the man with many tangents. Ooh, I like that. The man with many tangents. I might have to put that. Maybe Xevious will do another piece of artwork of me as the man with many tangents. Stubble says, this will be a very different letter from me. During the weekend, I visited my cousin and we spent time in his garden, eating good food and talking about everything and nothing. After a while, his kids went inside and started to watch the Pixar movie Inside Out. I watched a few minutes from a distance since I'd never seen the movie. I had something of a flashback from my own childhood from when I was 7 or 8, somewhere in the single digits. When I was that age, I often watched the French cartoon Il était une fois. The English title was Once Upon a Time. Sorry. It's a running joke on this channel that I can't pronounce French. There were a number of series from 1978 and onward. Each series was very informative about a given subject. The first was about man, as in human. The second was about space. The third was about life, and so on. I only remember fragments from it since I watched it when I was very young and it was a cartoon aimed at young children. The thing that Inside Out reminded me of was the series called Once Upon a Time Life. When Life aired, I had more or less grown out of that type of programming and I only watched a little of it. The thing was that the cartoon was both entertaining to young children as well as informative. In Life, the characters consisted of the different cells and compounds that make up the human body. The characters had a look somewhat that resembled the characters from a previous series, where the first series dealt with how it was to be human, and the second series was more about adventures in space. Some of the different types of characters in Once Upon a Time Life, I had to check Wikipedia for this information, was the manager of the brain, a bearded old man, the manager of the cell nucleus, who was often asleep in his chair, enzymes, men and some women in overalls and baseball-style caps, red blood cells, represented by red humanoids carrying oxygen bubbles or sometimes carbon dioxide. Elderly Professor Globus often tells his young companions Hemo and his mischievous friend Globin about how the different parts of the body work when they pass them. Neurotransmitters are blue speedy guys that deliver messages, or sometimes passengers, through nerves. White blood cells are the body's police force. They're divided into several types. The first of these are the neutrophil granulates and look like foot patrol policemen with batons and are completely white with yellow star badges on their chest. There are the lymphocytes B. They look as marshals in small one-man flying craft and have light blue uniforms and shoulder pads. They drop antibodies from a bomb bay on their underside. Lymphocytes T look similar to lymphocytes B, but they can discharge smoke that kills bacteria and viruses. The phagocytes are hovering spherical craft with large suction tubes. They can emit smoke to kill bacteria and viruses. What a crazy animated show for kids to watch. Another type of white blood cells are basophils, which are depicted as plump women who carry baskets of histamine grenades which can be thrown to attack bacteria and viruses. Microphages are depicted as big yellow ground vehicles shaped like frog heads with a big front scoop and grab and three wheels. They are the cleaning service of the body. There are immature leukocytes, which look like teenage humanoids in the same uniform as the lymphocyte B pilots. They have clearly not graduated to active status yet. The antibodies that the lymphocyte B uses from their flying craft are small white insectoid characters which paralyzes the bacteria and viruses when they hit them. Then there are the bad guys, the villains, the antagonists, the pathogens. They consist of bacteria and viruses. The bacteria look like blue bullies and the viruses look like yellow worms with hands. They have the same face as the villains from the previous two series. There are a lot of other things like different organic molecules, but we don't have to get into that. Before writing this letter, I looked at some old clips of the series, and it's clearly aimed at children. It still holds up in places, but in other places you can feel that it's a cartoon that's 35 or 40 years old. Anyway, when I watched parts of the Pixar film Inside Out, I thought that the old Once Upon a Time series could work as inspiration for a new Pixar film. I think it could be kind of fun with characters representing the different cells and functions in the body. I'd like to see what modern animation and storytelling sensibilities could make of a story where the human body gets attacked by bacteria and virus terrorists. The body's defenses would have to rally their forces and fight them back. If they made the series for a somewhat older target audience compared to an old series and really populated it with interesting characters, I think it could be successful. The theme of a human body fighting an infection is surely timely, and I think it could really help in the education of young people when it comes to how the body works on a cellular level. It's always easier to learn something when you have some good mental imagery to connect things to. So what are your thoughts, Rob? Would you like to see a modern animated movie populated with fascinating characters where we see how the body's defenses successfully fight off one or several infections from different pathogens and at the same time learn how the body works? Thanks, Stubble McShave. Well, Stubble, sounds good to me. Why wouldn't you want to watch that? I think that could be quite fun, quite interesting, a little wacky. But somebody would probably come out and complain about it. I don't know if that's true, but they might. You never know. Another person from across the pond, all the way from Sarajevo, Vesna, ladies and gentlemen, Vesna Lukic, has written a letter. Another one. Hello, Robert. Since everybody is talking about the current DC universe, or maybe the better word for it is multiverse, I thought I might say something about it. Now, I think I should say something first that could trigger some people, but here we go. I'm not that big a fan of Snyder's vision of that universe, and it's because one character, Superman. Although I liked Man of Steel, there was one scene I could never get over with, and it bugs me every time I see it and know it's not the snapping of Zod's neck. Actually, that was the best part in the movie, and with the most, guess what, verisimilitude. I mean, what else can you do with an Armageddon type of a threat? Put him in prison? An earthly prison? Yeah, that'll work. No. It was the scene with his dad. Now, I don't know how Kryptonians treat their parents, but here on Earth, every kid would do everything to save his parents from mortal danger. If he could. Of course, except if his father was a douchebag. And Clark, at that point, knew he could. And all of that justification that I've heard, like, well, his father told him not to do it because the world is not ready for you yet, is nonsense, because he already did it by saving that bus. What? Nobody realized that it was him who saved those kids? Yeah, right. And by the way, who would think about those words while looking at the death of your parent, a death that you could prevent, that I couldn't swallow then and I can't swallow now, although I must admit I have a weird taste of food. Everything else was okay, except I've never bought the relationship between Clark and Lois, but it's not the director's fault. They just didn't have that chemistry. But all in all, I like that movie, so forgive me. I was expecting to see now a full-powered, full-strength Superman, a Christopher Reeve kind, okay, minus the cats, although I wouldn't mind if he would save some cat from time to time with that perfect body of his. And then there came Batman v Superman, and man, talk about waking up after the good party. No pill could heal the headache I've got after seeing my favorite character on his knees in tears in front of that Lex. And man, don't even start with me talking about Lex, because I think everybody who ever talked to me on that chat knows my feelings about the presentation of what supposes to be Superman's greatest villain. So for the sake of my blood pressure, I will skip that part and talk about, and I will use John Campia's words for it, Superman the Jobber. So let's all count his failure, shall we? First, he appears at court, being accused, and he didn't say a thing. I mean, he's supposed to be a journalist, so he should know at least how to write a statement, right? Next, he was so broken after the explosion that I really thought we would see him in a group therapy session speaking, "Hi, I'm Superman, and I'm an alcoholic." Of course, he got saved by Martha for the first time. Great. The second time would be even better. Now, although I've said that I won't talk about Lex, I have to address something about that scene when Superman was on his knees and in tears. I think that summons the whole vision that Snyder had for him in that movie. He wanted him to be broken. Not vulnerable, but completely broken. And I hate that scene because it's opposite to everything we've always known about Superman. Yes, he cares, but he never surrenders. And he definitely won't be on his knees crying. In my vision, he would take Lex by the throat and say, "Now let's go and find my mother together." And he could do it in a split second, because of his super speed. And he can fly, and he has laser vision, and he has super hearing. All this stuff that he knew he had. It wasn't the first time he saved his mother. And by the way, on the first day on the job, he killed the only remaining member of his species because he was threatening his mother and the rest of mankind. And don't even get me started with that so-called fight between him and Batman. All he should do is just levitate over Batman and say, "Look, Lex is having my mother as a hostage because he wants me to kill you. Oh, and by the way, her name is Martha," and game over. But no, it's not enough that Superman was weak. He had to be stupid as well. Good job, Snyder. So if you didn't get it by now, I really hate that movie. Although I have to say one thing. I really did love the first 15 minutes of that movie, right until Lex appeared, and the portraying of Batman minus the Martha scene. Also, he wasn't that good of a detective, was he? I mean, he spent all that time searching the way how to defeat Superman. He even found out that he was sensitive to kryptonite, and that was something even Superman didn't know. So it was something not publicly known, and yet he never found out where he came from. Didn't he read all those novels about the best way to defeat an enemy is to know all about him, including his home address and social security number? But all other stuff I saw about Batman I really loved. I mean, those I could see. I guess that warehouse battle sounded very well. To shame I couldn't see a thing. Now, that's my biggest complaint with this new DC universe. They're too dark, and I mean literally dark. Has none of them watched the Battle of Helm's Deep? You could show the night battle with just a simple use of blue light. And now I have to say, although there were a lot of problems in the Justice League movie, I mean the one we saw in the theater, but one thing I loved, and that's when Superman returned. He beat the shit out of every member of the Justice League, and he did it shirtless. And I loved it. Now my fear with the Snyder Cut is that, yes, he will show Batman strong, but by doing that, he will show Superman weak again. If he puts him on his knees in front of Flash 2, I will be really pissed. Nobody puts my soup in the corner, especially if he is shirtless. Vesna. Another great letter from Vesna. I love that everything is about shirtless, sweaty dudes. Cheers to you for that. Cheers to you. Joey Coke is here. And for those who don't know who Joey Coke is, let me remind you that Joey Coke did this pretty cool piece of artwork for my birthday that I keep forgetting about, and boy, do I love this piece of art. He also sent me some pieces of music on spec that you're going to hear relatively shortly. So, this from Joey Koch. Joey Koch says, I'm just going to leave this up here so you get a sense of Joey Koch as I read his letter. Hey, Rob, on yesterday's show, you read a letter by a PGSer mentioning Lord Sutch, and I got pretty excited. Screaming Lord Sutch was an actual proto-shock rocker singer-performer in the UK whom I'd love to see portrayed on the big screen, but it's got to have elements of the horror genre. His song, Jack the Ripper, first released in the early 60s, is a classic and should be a standard on any Halloween playlist. He performed wearing a black cape, a top hat with long black hair, and a ghoul makeup predating Alice Cooper by a few years. The sound is 50s rock and roll influence, but he recorded with Joe Meek, so there's some charming electronic weirdness in the production of the earlier material. His band members, performing as Screaming Lord Sutch and the Savages, at one time included pre-Led Zepp Jimmy Page and a pre-Deep Purple Richie Blackmore. The earliest material is the best. Any fan of Kiss, Ghost, any corpse paint wearing black metal band, or purveyors of retro horror should watch this live performance from 1964. Ooh. Let's put that in the live chat so you can see that. Here you go. Here is Lord Sutch playing in 64. Also, Rob, on the subject of old horror, I've been watching some great oldies lately, the best being The Bride of Frankenstein. The Bride of Frankenstein is one of the great horror films of all time. Holy shit, I've forgotten how amazing it is. The last 25 minutes or so when the monster is rampaging through the graveyard, then heads back to the lab with Dr. Pretorius, is so beautiful and gripping. I'm a total sucker for canted angles, and this delivers big time. Also, The Invisible Man from 1933. Same director as Bride, James Whale. Pretty good. I'd forgotten that the Invisible Man character, Dr. Jack Griffin, was an evil mass murderer with a very impressive body count in the hundreds. He's pretty menacing throughout most of the picture, too. John Barrymore double feature of Svengali, 1931, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1920. It was my first viewing of Svengali, and I totally dug it. It's a talkie, and Barrymore is both funny and menacing, looking a bit like a 90s Seattle rocker. Right from the enigmatic opening scene when one of his music students is leaving her lesson, and after he's found out that she's left her husband and his money because she's fallen in love with Svengali, with his back to the camera, she has a look of terror on her face, screaming, "What are you looking at me like that?" Or "Why are you looking at me like that?" When she's found dead of suicide, we know something's up, but what? There's a terrific sequence of technical beauty that really conveys Svengali's projection of his astral body. In his studio, we get an extreme close-up of Svengali's eyes rolled back. Bells are chiming. The camera pulls back through the closed window out into the night air. He hasn't moved, and we're outside his upper-level studio, and the camera keeps pulling back, revealing rooftops in the village, him still visible in the window, all in one shot, no cuts. Mats and miniatures, I suppose. I was amazed. The whole film is super watchable, and the interior sets have a very appealing German expressionistic style to it. And before I wrap up this letter, I wanted to tell you how delightfully surprised I was when you highlighted the Aurora Hammer mashup birthday card I sent you. I'm totally glad you dug it. I had fun making it, and I hope the name on the casket gave you a good laugh. Joey Koch. Well, there you go, people. And I love this. I got to get a poster version of this. I think the art is great. And as you know, I even have an Aurora t-shirt that I wear. So thanks, Joey, for that. Much appreciated. And you know what? I left this picture when I remembered I had it. I left it in my software so I could just call it up because I wanted to be able to do that. Electron Star Collapse is back with a third letter, which is exciting. Hail Viceroy. Sorry to leave you hanging on the specifics of my gender. I'm a bit scatterbrained at times, so I sometimes forget that details might be important. I'm male transitioning to female, and for sake of additional clarity, I'm generally attracted to other women, but I can admit to finding a few men that look rather nice. As for pronouns, don't care, at least not at the moment. My favorite pronouns are I, me, and mine. I say that with tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of true. Although I'm reminded of a time when I worked in a call center, I never thought my voice was very feminine, but I would commonly have people apologizing for calling me ma'am on the phone. I just laughed and said, Don't worry about it. My wife calls me ma'am. I'm not married, but it was easier to say that than fiance or girlfriend. I also strangely had times people called me ma'am to my face accidentally, despite the fact that I had a full beard in plain view. I guess they could see under the veneer and didn't realize it. But to move on to a more geeky subject, I wanted to add to the conversation about changing the race or gender of a given character. I do agree 100% that if you're going to do something like Superman being black, we should learn how he has to deal with the difference. A point I failed to convey in my first letter is that introducing a new hero that has to grow up different shows us how they are capable to become the hero that can properly represent their people. A black hero in the South has great opportunity for conversation. A young hero in training discovering their sexuality is a valuable story to tell. But Alan Scott, after 2 children, decades of heroics, powerful enough to merge universes, suddenly realizing he's gay only after all of this, does nothing to evolve the character's story. Talk about tokenism, man. I hated that. I briefly saw in the chat someone mention that swapping gender is just bad writing. I am gender swapping, and even I think it's trite. I'm reminded of those bad filler episodes where a magic spell or a machine turns one of our heroes into a woman, heaven forbid. Like the last episode of classic Star Trek, Turnabout Intruder. But they saved the day and reversed the process. Phew, that was a close one there. It's a good thing that indignity is over with. Earth X, a comic that I loved, did this with Thor to show him humility. It was also probably one of the weakest plot devices in the comic because nothing came of it. Yet I find it strange that one of the best examples of exploring the implications of gender comes from the Orville. In the 3rd episode, About a Girl discussed gender identity with a lot of discourse and tension. It even strained the relationship of 2 parents, each with different reasons as to why they feel it's right or wrong to force a sex change on their baby child. And while I haven't progressed far in the show, it sounds like there are some ramifications to the outcome of the episode. There are, actually. The execution is questionable in some parts, and it's basically a rewrite of a Next Generation episode, but it allows us as a species to ask what we feel is the right answer, and what your friend thinks is the right answer. Before I end, I wanted to make a comment about Babylon 5 again. I grew up with Star Wars, but I wasn't as into it as most, probably because staring into C-3PO's eyes is nightmare fuel to me. I was born in 1983, so I missed the original run of Battlestar Galactica, but Babylon 5 had that spectacle and magic on screen people talk about when Star Wars first hit cinemas. For me, Babylon 5 was my Star Wars. So when you showed that new render of the station, that was simply pure magic all over again. Don't let the stars collapse on you. Well, since you brought it up, Mojo, my buddy Mojo, that is a new render he has done. Mojo won Academy Awards for, I believe, Babylon 5 and Voyager. Maybe there were 2 for Voyager. But he's been working on something now. He hasn't said what this is for. He's alluded to it, but he hasn't said exactly what it's for. And if you look at this new render, he dropped this on Facebook the other day. This is pretty dope. And look at that. I mean, I think, if you were to redo all the effects on Babylon 5 and then up-res the live-action stuff, it could really, really work well. So, indeed, check that out. This next one, again, comes from our favorite father, Calvin Bowes. Calvin says, Dear Rob, why do studios buy the rights to an IP and then change it into something it is not? You've covered this with Star Trek, but I wanted to discuss this with another show I loved as a child, and that was Perry Mason. When I was 6, I would watch Perry Mason every night. This show made me want to become a defense attorney. Perry Mason was an honest, upright lawyer who helped the hapless people who were wrongly accused of a crime they did not commit. With the help of Paul and Della, they would work within the law to find the truth. You watch the show to watch Perry Mason see a mystery unfold and see how Mason gets to the criminal to confess. Now we see HBO is doing Perry Mason, and we get a show set in the 30s, which is okay, as the books originally took place at this time. What is not okay is that they start him off as a sleazy detective breaking into people's houses to take photos of people having sex, and he also gets his ties from dead bodies at the morgue. This show feels more like CSI than Perry Mason. This is really strange to me. The producers say, let's do Perry Mason, but let's make it something it is not. So my bottom line question to you, Rob, is why would a studio buy the rights to Perry Mason if they don't want to do Perry Mason? I can tell you this show would not have made a 6-year-old me want to be a lawyer. Well, Calvin, I mean, I think, look, when you go back, let's talk about The Thing. The original The Thing was basically James Arness played, a vegetable? Walking around, a humanoid vegetable. And when we see Carpenter's The Thing, it truly was a thing. I think this look at Perry Mason, they're going back and looking at... they're probably... I have not read the source material, so I don't know. But they go back and they look at the source material and they come up with something like what we saw. I know a lot of people, I've not yet dipped my toe into Perry Mason, but I do want to see it. I just think, I don't mind if something's... The question is... The question that I have for you, while it might not be like the original Perry Mason, are the stories good? And even though they're not inspiring to you, is it a good story? And I'm curious, do you think that it's a good story? If you looked at it totally objectively, could you find it within your heart to think it's a good story? But that's a question only you can answer. I can't answer that for you. This one comes from Keith O'Neill. Hi, Rob. I have a question that I would love your opinion on. Why else would I be writing in? I know movie posters get a bad rep these days, as some should. Some look like last-minute Photoshop rush jobs. But do you think movie posters should be given industry awards like the Oscar or Golden Globes? Well, they are, actually. They do get awards. Key Art gets awards. I know not everyone will agree with me, but I say that they should. After all, they are often people's first impression of a movie. People do put effort into them, and in a way, they are an extension of the movie. Do you think so? Why or why not? Well, I used to be a huge movie poster collector. I collected, my biggest collection was what was called big paper. So standard movie posters that you see in a movie theater are called one-sheets. Now, up until the mid-'80s, one-sheets were always 27 inches by 41 inches. But they had a white half-inch border around them. Then, all movie ad materials from the studios used to be made by a company called the National Screen Service Corporation. And there were regional offices around the country that would create the artwork and print it out and distribute it to theaters. So if you look at most movie posters pre-1984-85, they all say at the bottom, this poster is the property of the National Screen Service Corporation, and then a lot of the time there's a number on the bottom, like a lot number, like what lot of that year that it came out was. So, and that's why movie posters were always folded once this way and then twice horizontally. And so most movie posters were not rolled. There were some movie posters that were rolled. I still have a rolled Alien one sheet. But one sheets, especially when I moved to LA, one sheets became no fun anymore because there was one sheets everywhere. But the National Screen Service Corporation also made much bigger posters. They made what are called 3 sheets, which were 47 inches by 81 inches. And they were basically one sheets stacked up like this. There were 6 sheets. And I have a few 6 sheets. I have a Clockwork Orange 6 sheet that one day I'm going to get framed. A 6 sheet is 6 one sheets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they're done because they couldn't print that big. My Clockwork Orange 6 sheets in 4 pieces. I have a Soylent Green 6 sheet. So I was collecting what's called big paper. And I spent a lot of money. 6 figures on movie posters and frames. And then after I left my office in the mid-aughts, there was all my posters were in storage. And I'm like, what the hell am I ever going to do with these posters again? And so they're all at one of Hollywood's preeminent previs companies called The Third Floor. They bought my entire collection from me outright. And there's some great big paper there. A lot of the early Bond posters are there, things like The Dirty Dozen and The Great Escape. I had some really, really, really great posters that they have. My Italian 4 sheets of like Dawn of the Dead and Mask of the Demon. I mean, they've got some great stuff. If you ever want to get big movie posters, and they're expensive, big paper, there's a store here in LA called L'Imagerie. Call up Debbie. Tell her I sent you. Or just go to their website, L'Imagerie. It's L'Image, however you spell imagination, but L'Imagerie, check it out. Most amazing collection of movie posters I've seen anywhere. But they're very expensive because she caters to the industry. But they've got great, great, great stuff. But yeah, there is a website, and let me see if I can find that website. if you don't know about it, let's see. I want to say IMPA movie posters. Yeah, the IMP Awards. The IMP Awards. So the wait a minute. That's not right. That is not right. IMPA Awards. Okay, it's IMPA. No, IMP Award. Let's see. 2006. Oh, here we go. Well, apparently, yeah. Okay. This is an index thing. Let me go to not the index and let me see what the main. Well, I'll put in the link, but you can see, and you can see all movie poster key art and all that. Let's see, it's right here. So I'll put it in the live chat. Check it out. But yeah, I don't really, I've got some big paper left that I need to get framed. I still have like a 3-sheet, which is 47 inches by, I want to say it's 47 by 81, or no, maybe it's 27 by 81. I think that's what it is, 27 by 81. I forget. But anyway, so check that out, and you can go see movie posters. But I'm a huge fan of movie posters, and so they do give out awards. But, key art is kind of lost. They don't need it as much anymore, unfortunately. And I think it's a bummer because great movie poster art, to me, here's the thing that all great movie poster art should do one thing in particular. And it's very hot in here, so I apologize. I'm going to wipe my brow because I'm schwitzing. So I think a great piece of movie key art should do one thing and one thing only. A great piece of key art, and that's what it's called, key art. That's the actual image that they use to sell the film. Key art should mythologize in one image or convey the entire feeling of a movie. And that's what that's what the great promise of key art is. I mean, everybody's got a favorite movie poster, but I mean, if you think about it, just modern movie posters suck for the most part. The philosophy behind movie posters is now they just tell you that the movie's coming out. But the idea that it should mythologize the film is a little too esoteric for today's marketing people. They want you to know it's coming out and who's in it. It's what's called the star cell. That's all they care about, and it's a bummer. I mean, it's changed the world, and it's not as good as it used to be. But so there you go. So thank you, Keith, for writing in, and check it out. What do you think about those movie posters or that site? Jermaine K is here. Jermaine K says, "Hello, Rob. Thanks for reading my previous letters and answering my James Bond questions. The backstory you told about Never Say Never Again was very interesting. There's a Bond question at the end of this letter, but I wanted to ask your opinions on two other topics first. How do you feel about Conan? Whether it's the not Conan O'Brien, but Conan the Barbarian. Whether it's the Arnold movies or the comics or the Jason Momoa movie, are you a fan of the story and characters? I believe a comics-accurate Conan franchise could be a big hit. Every kingdom has deep lore that could be explored. There's magic, combat, adventure, and political intrigue, especially when Conan becomes king. What do you think? After watching your appearance on John Campia's show earlier today, I realized the Batman trailer didn't impress me as much as it apparently impressed you. Everything about Batman looked great, but Pattinson's look for Bruce Wayne is a total and complete miss. Dude looks like the Crow and Edward Scissorhands had a baby. Also, why are so many Batman fans hung up on the idea of a gritty, realistic take? When I hear those words, all I can envision are numerous significant changes being made to certain characters, or those characters not being used at all. Rob, can you imagine a comics-accurate Mr. Freeze in this world? Or a comics-accurate Bane in the same world as Phoenix's Joker? I've never really liked Azrael, but I just don't see how Christopher Nolan or Matt Reeves could portray Jean-Paul correctly. Sorry if this letter is too long. I'll end here. Which Bond movie do you think is Connery's best? A buddy of mine says Goldfinger. I say From Russia with Love. Thanks and take care. Well, I think, as I've said on the show many times before, I think From Russia with Love is the best distillation of Ian Fleming's novels that was ever put on film. But I think I really like Goldfinger Goldfinger, I think I give the edge to over From Russia with Love, just because I find it more entertaining. It's a little bit more over the top, a little bit more fantastical, and but I don't necessarily think that Connery. I think Goldfinger is the best of the Connery Bonds. So maybe I'm gonna have to go with your friend, but I do think From Russia with Love is the best adaptation of Fleming's work, if that helps. And I do believe that. As far as Conan the Barbarian goes, I really like what Marvel Comics did. And again, I like what Marvel Comics did in the 70s was they licensed a lot of literary characters like Conan the Barbarian, like John Carter of Mars, even Fu Manchu. That's why Shang-Chi's father was Fu Manchu. They were able to license that. Well, since they lost the rights to Fu Manchu, and I guess now it'd be considered the portrayal a little racist, they're not doing that. But I think my man Tony Leung, who is probably the real Mandarin in Shang-Chi, is Shang-Chi's father, which I think is the greatest thing ever. Because, as I've said, if I could be Asian, I would be Tony Leung. That's what I would say. So I'm excited about that. But I would love to see a real Conan. I'm surprised, to be honest. You know, they leaned into the barbarian aspect, even with Jason Momoa. I think you're right. They could make a much more politically minded Conan the Barbarian. And I'll tell you, man, I think the first Conan the Barbarian is a great movie. I've always loved it. I love Basil Poledouris' score. I love James Earl Jones. I love Stendhal Bergman. I love Mako. I love everything about Conan, and I would love to see delving into that world. I think it'd be great. I don't know who they would cast to be Conan now. I think it'd be tough to do that, but one never knows. Let's jump over and see what all of you lovely people are saying over in this live chat. Let's see where we're at. I know that people have been sending in stuff. Let's see. Willow. Of course, Willow's always there. Johnny on the spot, Willow is. Willow says, what was worse for the Terrans? When they were a fascist empire or when they got enslaved by the Cardassians and the Klingons? The humans can't seem to catch a break in the Mirrorverse. Isn't that the truth? I think it was much better when they were a fascist empire. I love the Mirror Universe, but I really felt they sort of missed the boat the way the Mirror Universe was portrayed in Deep Space Nine, to be honest. We never saw the Mirror Universe in Next Gen. But look, my favorite Mirror Universe story is Mirror Mirror. I think it was done really well back then. The problem I had on Deep Space Nine is everybody was too much of a mustache-twirling villain. If you guys like the Mirror Universe, and you know your Mirror Universe lore from those episodes, I cannot recommend highly enough David Mack's 2 Mirror Universe, his duology. David Mack's Mirror Universe books, the novels. One's Rise Like Lions, and I forget. I think the first one is Sorrows of Empire, and the second one is called Rise Like Lions. Delicious books. Delicious. They will make your mouth water as you read them. They're so good. But I have to go with Mirror Mirror. I liked it when human beings were fascist, and your agonizer please, and I'm the captain's woman, and I like it, and I will be again. Julius Goodwin is here and says, I've always wondered this, and maybe you can answer it for me. Many stories illustrate that the industry can make, or more likely, break you. Starving artists can be quite literal. So what's the allure? What makes you leave everything you know to risk it? That's a good question. Well, I think, why do people go into the motion picture business? Well, first of all, what people don't necessarily realize about the motion picture business is there's a lot of different things to do in it. A lot of people think you're just going to be a director. But, there's a lot of various, if you want to work, say, in the art department, or you want to be a production designer, maybe you wanted to go into architecture or something, and if you're an architect, you get to build a building. But if you're a production designer, like somebody like Guy Hendricks Dias, who I've worked with, or at least I got to watch him work. I mean, imagine you're building all these different kind of sets. You're in charge of the entire look of a film. As an artist, I mean, he did the production design of Inception. Look at the opening sequence in the rooms in the building in Inception, and then figuring out a way to flood those rooms. I mean, look at how much fun he was having. Now, that has nothing to do necessarily with the director who's thinking about the mise en scène. He gets to build the sets, which is entirely a different discipline, but you're still working in movies. I mean, for me, I wanted to work in films. It wasn't a question. I never once thought of livelihood, which has been I think my greatest failing in life, is that I'm always hanging on by a pinky, financially or whatever. But I've just always loved putting things together. I'm just delighted by working in the industry. When I get off of this show, I'm going to go the series that I've been working on. I've got to listen to. I've got to look at animation that's come in for episode 8, which is the final episode of the first season, and I have to go listen to a sound mix. So I get to comment on them with the creator and producer of the show. Well, I love this. I get to weigh on that. There's so many different creative disciplines, but to me, making movies is like magic. And when you're a part of magic, working on a movie set. When you're on a movie set, when you finally watch the finished film, the difference between what it's like to work on a movie set, even if you've worked every single day on a movie, like Superman, I was on for 150 days, and Narnia longer, but I was every day shooting with a camera on Superman, where I had a team that I employed on Narnia. But you're watching all this stuff, and then when you finally see the movie, it's all amazing to me. It has never stopped. It's having its allure. I've loved it. And I think that's why. I mean, my father was vice president of an insurance company, and it was probably drudgery for him, but he got to meet so many people, and he had so many large accounts in Seattle, like he insured the Kingdome, or he insured Jerry Weintrop's Concerts West. So he was constantly dealing with people, and my dad was kind of a people person. He liked people. He interacted with people. And I think that was the appeal to him. But like, I couldn't imagine ever going into an office. He was vice president of an insurance company for like 35 years. I mean, I can't even imagine that. The thing is, when you're working in movies, you never know. Everything is different. You're working with different people. You're working on different kinds of projects with different tones. And I think what's interesting about the people that are lifers, like I would consider myself a lifer in this business, is that you're there. It's a grind. Unless you're very commercially successful, you never know what your next job is. But still, I find it very gratifying. Even if I work on something like, look, this series that I'm working on for Netflix now, I play a very small part in this series. But what I do when I do my work, it's fascinating to me. And what I've been given is access to everything that went into the development of this show, every script, all the notes. I've seen all the back and forths with the animation company, and I get to, now I'm participating more and more as the show goes on because of my input. But it's fascinating to watch. And it's the whole process. I mean, the entire process of making movies is so fascinating, because the first part is you're writing. You're writing a script. Somebody's sitting there writing, or you might work, like I've written 2 scripts with Mark Altman. I collaborated, and I wrote one screenplay by myself. And then so I've written 3 screenplays in my life, one of which was produced, one of which was going to be produced and could still be produced, and one that I it didn't work out. It came close, it didn't work out. Now I'm working on a script that was somebody else wrote, and I'm doing a director pass on it that I want to make for a long time. So 4 scripts. But the writing portion of it's amazing, because you just make shit up. Actually, it's not true if you consider Axanar. I contributed to another screenplay as well, but it's just the writing process is so different. Then you're pre-planning. You're like planning a war campaign, moving men and materials, women and materials, people and materials to try and achieve the goal. And then I love post-production. Post-production is a whole different discipline. I mean, when you're shooting, it's very social, and you've got a whole crew of people around you, and it's every time you get a great shot off or you see a great performance, the creative buzz is incredible. Then when you're in post-production, it becomes like a puzzle, and you're working intimately with the director. Or if I'm the director cutting my own stuff, it's it's a complete creative flow. There's so much about the business. And then there's deal making. I mean, it's a combination of all businesses and all arts rolled into one. So I think that's probably the appeal. Stubble McShave sends a tip in and says, The Stand finally got a release date, December 17th, and I can't be more excited. And Sean Connery turned 90 today. Too bad his last movie was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. God bless Sean Connery. I know, his last movie. Look at Stephen Norrington, man. Stephen Norrington pushed Sean Connery out of the business. Can you believe that? Unbelievable. But Bagresh, well, so let's all say happy birthday to Sean. Happy birthday, Sean Connery, to Zed. If I didn't mention Zed's name, Elizabeth would get mad. Bagresh sends in a super chat and says, "Hi, Rob. I just wanted to support the channel, but I'll throw in a seemingly random question. Do you have any favorite pixel art games?" No, I do not. Would you call Minecraft a pixel art game? Pixel art games kind of came after me. I don't have a favorite pixel art game. But you know what? Let me be clear on that, because I might be wrong. I could very well be wrong. Hang on. Let me just see, since you asked. Yeah. I as I look at this, I do not have favorite pixel art games. However, what would I could go on Steam and obviously check them out. I am open to suggestions, because I'm always wanting to learn more about everything that has to do with pop culture. So I would like to answer that question. I would like to have a favorite pixel art game. So help me out. What do you think I should? What do you think that I should play? Because I'll go play it. Julius Goodwin sends in a tip and said, "Have you ever considered writing a book? I think your story is an interesting one that needs to be told." Well, it's interesting you say that. I do have a title for my book, and I've told you. I don't think I've told the story since you've joined the channel. So I was at the Cannes Film Festival, and I was there at the film market in 1999 with Free Enterprise. And Mark Altman and I were at a party in a chateau up in the hills above Cannes. And there was Greek statues surrounding this beautiful pool. And I had a sport coat on and button-down shirt and slacks and everything. And I was hammered. And it was fun. We were having a great time. And for whatever reason, I got up and I said, everybody should come to my screening tomorrow of Free Enterprise. And I was hanging off one of the statues, and I jumped in the pool with my clothes on. And while I jumped into the pool, a photographer was there from Empire magazine, which is one of my favorite film magazines, and they caught this picture of me diving into the pool. And the caption that they had next to the picture was, "Another nameless I think it was another nameless American director." I don't know if they used the word American. I'm adding that, but the way I remember it is, "Another nameless director in a shameless act of self-promotion." That's the title of my book. And if I ever write a nonfiction book, but I'm not there yet. I can't write it yet. But I've always wanted, what I really want to write is a horror novel, not a science fiction novel, but I want to write a very bloody and sexually explicit horror novel, the way I like what I used to read when I was a kid. And I've always wanted to do that. So there you go. Julius Goodwin sends in another tip and says, on an unrelated note, have you started fermenting that wine from the kit yet? Well, we have not, and that's because Elizabeth was in school up until Sunday. So this is yesterday and today were her first weekdays that she has not been in school, and she's catching up on a bunch of stuff. But don't you worry, I'm going to make a whole video about our experience making wine. It's going to be out there. Look who's here. Dieter is here. Shiny. Dieter Bastian is here. Greetings, Rob. Really lucky the cup survived this time. Yes, look at this. My cup from Saarbrücken. But it's a little small. I mean, not that I'm complaining. I'm the last guy who should be complaining about things that are small, to be honest. But, yeah, because I could drink, giant coffee mugs. But it survived, and I will use it along with this. I have to tell you, Dieter, this is so terrible. I haven't taken this inside, but I'll do this because I will show you that I do this live. This is probably terrible to admit. So this is instant coffee Dieter has sent to me. Now, I haven't done it a lot, but I do love to do this. And you let it dissolve in your tongue. One of my favorite things in the world is coffee, and I love coffee candy. Coffee candy is like that. What is it? The C's, those coffee candies that come in the colored foil with those wrappers. Oh my God, those would be my probably behind Bruce's Candy Kitchen, cinnamon saltwater taffy from Bruce's Candy Kitchen. Those little coffee candies that are wrapped with those colored wrappers around them. Second favorite candy in the world. So, greetings, Rob. Really lucky the Cup survived this time, putting Saarbrücken on the right map of big cities. The Ninth Gate is a new Korean edition. Oh, see, I didn't even know. Wow, God love Asian countries and their packaging, and so good. The Ninth Gate is a new Korean edition. Thought it would be a good companion piece to the Swack Props book, even though you probably have the U.S. Blu-ray already. I do have the U.S. Blu-ray already, but it's Lionsgate and it's boring, and this is dope. This is dope. I mean, give me a slipcase. I'm a happy man. So thank you, Dieter, for that, and I will put it with Swack's book. Johnny Stewart is here. Johnny Stewart says, greetings all. Captain Rob, I sent a letter asking about Universal Monster movies. Did I miss it already? Or was it mediocre, or was it lost in space? Curious for your take on this. I don't remember. Maybe I read it, but maybe I haven't read it yet. I don't know. I've got letters I haven't read yet, so you never know. Cardinal Sin is here and sends in a super chat and says, Foundation Imaging. Go Mojo. Yes, you are referring to this again. Mojo's render of the Babylon 5 station. He did put this on Facebook, so I don't think I'm violating any public trust by putting it up here. But you never know. Somebody might be like, copyright strike. So Cardinal Sin, thank you for that. Oh, Bob Kowal is here. Megarilla Bob Kowal. One of two. My idea for a Thing sequel. McReady has partial amnesia in an isolated prison for years, mass murder, but it's really a government research facility housing the remains from the Antarctic. When the inevitable craziness breaks loose, we learn that what? Bob. We learned that you didn't get your number 2. We learned that. I guess I can't answer. Michael Preston sent in a super chat and says, I found Babylon 5 story to be excellent, but similar to Star Trek Deep Space Nine. What are your thoughts, and do you believe they ripped off Straczynski? Well, I really don't believe that they ripped off Straczynski. I think the idea of having a space station as a port of call, it's not new. I mean, Star Trek had a space station in K7. It had a space station in Star Trek the Motion Picture. There were star bases throughout Star Trek. And then, of course, in the Next Generation, there were star bases. I mean, you saw Space Dock in Star Trek 3. You saw Space Dock in Star Trek 6. And Next Generation, they reused Space Dock and they reused the Motion Picture Regula 1. So it wasn't a stretch that people had the same kind of ideas. And I think that Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine were very different shows. Yes, the basic premise was kind of the same. And you could say that the Shadow War and then there was later the Dominion conflict. I mean, I think that's just born out of when people are coming to your station, they wanted something that would expand the scope of the show. But they're very different shows. They were doing very different things. And the fact that, you know, having the Narn and the Centauri and the Shadows and the Vorlons and the Minbari, I thought Babylon 5 is a much different kind of a science fiction show than Deep Space Nine was. I don't think anybody ripped anybody else off. I know, I've read I've heard both sides, but I just don't think they did. But I really love Babylon 5. I just wish they didn't end the Shadow War in Season 4, that they could have taken it all the way out through Season 5. Unfortunately, they couldn't, which is a bummer. Brandon Sheehy sends in a super chat and says, your thoughts on The Squid and the Whale? Still my favorite Noah Baumbach film with an outstanding performance from Jeff Daniels as the pompous dad. I have never seen it. I know. I've never seen The Squid and the Whale. I feel terrible. I could lie to you and say I did, but I didn't. I have never seen it. I apologize. So I can't answer that question. But I'll go see it now. You know, people ask. I will go see it. Our chairman, Jeffrey Mao, is here. And Jeffrey Mao says, I was thinking that you would be thinking about Psycho when I wrote that line. However, Psycho is a bit different, but still interesting, as we are getting the actual original theatrical version on 4K for the first time ever on home video. That was the first thing that I thought of 60 years ago. And how can you blame me? So there you go. Stubble McShave says, have you seen Robert McKee's YouTube channel where he talks about different aspects around screenwriting and answer questions? I've read all of his books. I have not watched his YouTube channel, but I probably should because I like McKee, man. I do like McKee. So, yeah. Bagresh says, I was talking about old school games like Super NES, etc. Oh. Well, would N64 count? Because I think the games I played the most, I loved on N64. I loved GoldenEye, Star Fox. I loved Shadows of the Empire. Yeah, I mean those are games I like. If those count, because PlayStation, Super NES was the first game console system that Super NES. No, N64 was the first console I bought. After I was playing PlayStation at my friend Sean's house all the time, but I never had a PlayStation or Nintendo. I bought N64 first. So, yeah. Oh, so Bob Quall, there it is. My idea for a Thing sequel. MacReady has partial amnesia in an isolated prison for years, mass murder, but it's really a government research facility housing the remains from the Antarctic. When the inevitable craziness breaks loose, we learn that MacReady is a duplicate and does not know it. Being such a stubborn SOB, he maintained his identity and form. The final act has MacReady getting triggered into a human shapeshifter hybrid and battles the other things. I like that. I think it's pretty cool. I'll go with that. I buy into that absolutely. Let's see. This next letter comes from James Kevins. James Kevins says, greetings, Rob. I wanted to drop a line about a comment in episode 496. The subject was gender or race swapping a character and how, if it's done correctly, it should reveal new insights into a character. I love that many people keyed on this. It's good. How would a female James Bond differ from her male counterpart, for instance? You commented that you'd love to see a black Superman. Would he still be a hero during the age of racist Jim Crow laws? I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but that story has kind of been done. In 2008, Marvel retconned their early continuity to introduce a character called the Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel was extremely popular during the 50s and 60s until a pitched battle tore loose part of his face mask to reveal the identity of the man beneath. Dr. Adam Brashear, Korean war vet, brilliant scientist, and a black man during one of America's most racist periods. Writing for Marvel.com on May 4th, 2020, Ben Morse spoke with series creator Kevin Gravois. Gravois or Gravoix? I'll say Gravois. If I'm getting it wrong, Kevin, I'm sorry. Writer-actor Kevin Gravois in creating Blue Marvel. Kevin Gravois stands out in any crowd. A towering and statuesque giant with a booming voice that has brought life to numerous animated supervillains, including Terrans and the Super Skrull. The 57-year-old Chicago native also appeared in live-action films like Congo and Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. However, Gravois also dreamed of creating his own stories, a dream he achieved on a huge scale as a writer and co-creator of the Underworld franchise. He also appears on screen as the werewolf Raze, naturally and eventually carried over to the comic book realm. Gravois lists his childhood hobbies as everything from collecting bugs to playing football. But he also had a particular affinity for reading focused on science fiction and horror. We definitely park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. Around age 12, the youth discovered comics, and there would be no turning back from what he calls a lifelong passion. The Fantastic Four and Hulk were my absolute go-to favorites, followed by the Avengers and Thor, Kevin lists, describing the Marvel characters he gravitated to towards his teenage years after forming an attachment to early animated interpretations prior. I mean, when you talk about the first 100 issues of each of those titles, I think they're unparalleled in terms of comic creativity. As far as my favorite creators were concerned, the first ones I recognized were Stan Lee and Jack Kirby because as a team, they created most of Marvel's foundational characters. Afterwards, it was guys like Roy Thomas and Marv Wolfman who I admired as writers, and John Buscema, Gene Colan, George Perez, Jim Starlin, and John Byrne, who were my favorite artists. Since the late 80s, Gravois had attempted to break into Marvel as a writer with no payoff. Pursuing this dream parallel to his goals in Hollywood proved difficult, so he focused on the latter and ended up achieving cinematic success. However, comics never submerged completely, and after Underworld hit big, the writer turned publisher, working on independent comics and launching his own small studio, Darkstorm Comics. This put him on the radar at the House of Ideas, who reached out about launching a New Warriors reboot spinning out of the Civil War event. Kevin calls the 20-issue initial outing a great experience that allowed me to become acclimated to the profession and how comics are done at the top level.
Entrenched at Marvel, following his initial assignments, Gravois knew the time had come to unleash an idea he'd held on to since his teenage years. As a kid, there weren't many characters that looked like me, meaning black superheroes, he explains. And even as a kid, there were certain things about the ones that did that kind of bothered me. They were pretty stereotypical. Many of Marvel's black superheroes were based on previously existing white characters. With the exception of Storm and Monica Rambeau, they weren't very powerful. I was always drawn to the more powerful characters whose abilities left you in awe. And none of the popular mainstream black superheroes were actually created by black writers. And not that there's anything wrong with that. That didn't diminish their popularity or worth as characters. But I did feel that after almost 60 years of existence, it was time for that to change and give me a character life on a large established comic book stage. Enter Adam Brashear, alias the Blue Marvel. Conceived by Gravois as a 13-year-old, this character could conceivably stand toe-to-toe with the best and most powerful superheroes ever created. The writer would also gift his creation an aptitude for science and football from his own experiences. With Adam, I was saying it doesn't matter what people think of you, you can tear it up in the classroom and on the football field and have a strong moral core as well. Finally, Blue Marvel wore a full-bodied uniform so he could operate more freely as a hero and not be saddled with a racial controversy, a concept that came straight from Kid Kevin and his friends. The 2008-2009 5-issue limited series Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel, written by Gravois with art by Matt Broom, established Brashear as a prominent hero of the 1960s who received no less an honor than the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President John F. Kennedy. On the same day he bestowed this honor, JFK urged Blue Marvel to enter an early retirement rather than stoke racial tensions after a battle damaged his uniform and revealed him as a black man. The balance of the project explored Brashear's reemergence at the behest of Marvel's modern heroes to aid against his returned archenemy, Anti-Man. The Sentry had come out a few years before, about a forgotten hero, so an aspect of what I wanted to do is no longer novel, the writer recounts, so I had to have Adam come out of retirement in order to deal with a supervillain even the Avengers couldn't handle. As to highlights from Legend of the Blue Marvel, Gravois cites his conversation where Adam learns his wife had been sent to spy on him, as well as a battle with the Avengers and knocking the Sentry into orbit, which he describes as the stuff of comics. He also praises Broom's art, hailing his work as phenomenal. I just want him to be a good classic heroic role model for the cause of justice, Gravois states, on the lasting legacy of his work on the Blue Marvel, and that his heroism is about serving the people, not his own selfish needs. That's very interesting. I did not know any of that. I did not know that comic. So there you go. Peace and long life, your brother in fandom, Jim Kevins. Well, Jim, thank you for writing in about that. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. John Willis writes in and says, Rob, you had me at 200 years. Man, you read the whole thing. What an enunciator you are. Righto, it was the original Battlestar Galactica, not Galactica 1980. Knee-jerk reaction on my part when you covered this topic the other day. The comment about addressing galactic exploration within the space of a few episodes of Trek is well taken. In fact, it's really inventive. Much more Apollo moonshot-like, and could be used as some filler in a future series to introduce characters we'd like to get to know, but were denied. Scarcity creates demand, or if I didn't draw an audience, then experiment concluded. Assignment Earth, anyone? I really liked your analysis that we as a race, the human race, are stuck in the tropes of our meager existence and can't properly relate to beings that might have vastly longer lifespans. It's a very thoughtful observation that doesn't affect them directly. What do they care about the future? There is so little science fiction on the topic of life extension and even fewer movies. You know, the people that deal with it the best is vampire fiction, if you're an immortal. You know, I've often heard of Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire, as much as I like Vampire Lestat better. But a friend of mine, I remember, I want to say I was in college. I think I was in college when I read Interview. No, I wasn't, because I bought Vampire Lestat. No, I probably was in college. I bought Queen of the Damned when it originally came out, whenever that was. But I bought, no, because I think Vampire Lestat came out in 82, so I'm wrong. I read Vampire Lestat when it came out, and I hadn't read Interview with a Vampire. But I remember a friend of mine telling me he liked Vampire Lestat, and he said he didn't like Interview with a Vampire because he summed it up to me this way. He said, here's what Interview with a Vampire is about. It's Louis saying, I don't want to be a vampire, for 400 pages. That's how he put it. And who wouldn't want to be a vampire? And I'm like, okay, but vampirism, especially when you're dealing with immortality, like look at The Hunger. You know, Marion Blaylock's 2,000 years old. You know, they deal with the fact that everybody you know and love, like in Highlander, everybody you know and love is going to grow old and die, and you're going to stay the same. I'm like, well, that just gives you more of an opportunity to meet more interesting people. So humanity, you get used to that. I mean, especially like to me, I would love to be immortal. I'd love to live thousands of years. I would love to have lived. I mean, sure, it would suck to live through like the Black Death and everything, but I mean, if you knew you were immortal and you'd be very hard to kill, I think it would be really interesting. Can you imagine having lived through 2,000 years of human history? How crazy that would be. I mean, especially now, assuming we don't destroy ourselves and the world doesn't get burned to a cinder or we don't lose our atmosphere, we clean up our act. Where's the human race going to be even in 100 years? I wish I could see that. Anyway, it always comes down to the reluctant chrononaut, frozen and reawakened, Rip Van Winkle-like, or crashing the time barrier in a DeLorean with style for comedic benefit. In both cases, it's presented as an unfair or undesirable situation. Dune seemed to touch upon the issue in ways different from even the ways we think of Dune today. Lifespan had literally become a commodity. Blade Runner touched upon it with fake memories and reduced lifespan. So where am I going? Am I pressing counterexamples? No. It's completely undiscovered country where creativity is concerned, but you make very good points. I think even the authors of today do not wish to dwell upon their own mortality. Or perhaps the optimism of the audience doesn't want to dwell on it. They're just missing out on the age when life becomes a matter of how much is in your bank account. You shock me, sir, deftly plucking such a familiar topic to us all from thin air and bringing it into a serious conversation. Sometimes, perhaps, I'd like to bring you a beer. And yes, I'm familiar with the old proverb, what you talk about, Willis? Intimately. Well, thank you for this letter, John. I appreciate that a lot. You know, I think when you fill up your mind with all this stuff, your mind is constantly racing around like half the time when stuff happens to you, like daily life stuff, like what happened to me yesterday, getting a little professionally disappointing news, you know, suddenly your mind goes to different tangents, the road less traveled. What could have happened if, or maybe this could happen, or what can you do? It's never ending. But that's what makes life worth living, which I think is great. I think one of my greatest problems in life personally is that mentally I still consider myself the way I was when I was in my teens or 20s. You know, I'm waiting for the day where my physicality, my physical body will ultimately betray me, because I feel pretty good. You know, I mean, I feel good. Like I said, I'm not, you know, one day I'm going to find out I've got some terminal cancer or I've got some hideous ailment and I'll have to have prescription drugs, statin drugs, or whatever it is. You know, they're going to tell me, oh, you're going to get liver cancer if you don't stop drinking. Oh, wait a minute. No more beer? I have a beer here. Look at that. And that will suck. But, you know, I mean, the question, especially about life, do you want to live long or do you want to live well? I mean, it's a question. I don't think existing is enough. I still want to be able to have fun. But that, yeah, I mean, but being immortal, I'd take it. Omar94 is here. Hi, Rob. Since you've worked on film sets and met several actors, you might be able to answer this. I don't know why, but for some reason, actors seem to be allowed to alter movies in order to appease their wants and demands. I remember reading how Sylvester Stallone was able to get one of the cinematographers for Tango and Cash, Barry Sonnenfeld, fired because he didn't like how he looked when Sonnenfeld was shooting him. Other examples can be actors making decisions on scripts, casting, and directors. If an actor looks at a script and says something like, I don't like where my character arc is going, even if the script is really good and that needs to happen for the story to work, the script will get altered to appease the actor. An actor can get a director approval on a movie, which makes no sense since that would be something decided by a producer or a studio. Madonna said she was allowed director approval and to cast a leading man, which was meant to be her then-boyfriend Sean Penn, when she was supposed to be in the movie. Blind date, but she eventually left the movie when Bruce Willis was hired. While I think actors are important for movies since they're the ones on screen for everyone to see, I don't think they're important enough to make creative decisions involving casting, scripts, and direction. Thanks, live long and prosper. Well, Omar, that's an interesting question. First of all, especially the era of the movie star is different now than it used to be. When I would say the 80s and 90s were when you saw actors at the height of their powers. Because the thing is, if an actor could consistently, if their movies consistently had big box office, they're the ones that are front and center. You know, they're the ones that people are going to see. Even though actors work on movies usually the least of anybody working on a film. Writers, producers, directors could be working on a movie for years to get it off the ground. Then they might shoot the movie. Let's say it's a studio movie and they shoot it in 65 days. The actor comes in for 65 days, shoots and leaves. They might edit the movie for another year through post-production. The actor comes in and maybe does ADR for automatic dialogue replacement for a couple of days. He's looping lines. Or she's looping lines. And so that's it. But the people that make movies have to be there for a lot longer. But at the end of the day, if you were an actor like Tom Cruise, his movies, if you're making Mission Impossible, even that franchise has been around for a long time, and he's front and center, you're paying for Tom Cruise, so you allow the actors can set the tone. Now, smart actors know, like, look, it is really difficult to be a great movie actor. And I'll tell you why. Now, that's not to say theater actors are different, but acting in the theater and acting in a movie is very, very different. If you're a theater actor and you're doing a play, you're out there for the entire, say it's a 2-hour play, maybe there's an intermission, but basically you're acting and you're in character for those 2 hours. It's you. But when you're movie acting, you might have to deliver one line or a soliloquy that they're going to interrupt. So you constantly have to be bringing your performance and keeping a consistency to your performance, line after line after line. And sometimes, they'll shoot the same line 100 different ways, or you're shooting all this coverage. I mean, it's really hard and it's really stressful. Not that acting in the theater isn't stressful, but I think when you're acting on stage, you put yourself in a mindset and no one's interrupting you. I mean, imagine you're trying to get yourself in a particular mode of or a state of mind, and you're delivering this great performance, and then in the middle of what you're doing, somebody's going to go, cut, we got to roll out, or cut, we have to replace the battery, or cut, something was wrong with the sound, and you have to roll with that. Actors have it, I think, movie acting is really hard. Now, I grew up doing a little theater acting, school plays and stuff like that, and I've done a little bit of acting in movies and TV, but it's just small. But it's really, really, really hard. And an actor, part of what you're doing if you're a producer or a director, one of your jobs is to make sure that your talent feels taken care of. And what I mean by that is it's their face that's front and center. And as people say in Hollywood, you're only as good as your last project. And actors know that if they're in a bad movie, that could compromise their entire career. So if an actor's working well for a studio or a production company and they have hits, well, what changes are the production staff, the directors, the producers, those change, but the actor stays the same. And if the actor over multiple different creative teams still is delivering the goods, now you could say that actor attracts great creative teams. They each attract each other. But the actor is the consistent factor in those things. So the actor can be front and center. Now, with Sylvester Stallone, it's not like Sylvester Stallone was traditionally the most handsome guy in the world, but there's no one like Sylvester Stallone. And directing himself, nobody knows how he looks best than he does. I mean, the way he works out, he's very aware of how he looks and very aware. And in Tango and Cash, he wanted to look a certain way. I understand. Because he has an image. All he has is his image. That's what people are paying him for. So actors or actresses are very protective of that. And I think it's a mistake when actors are given too much control, because traditionally, they're really only interested in themselves in the sense that they want to be in the best possible. Actors want to be actors and actresses. They want to be in the best. They want to be in the best movies possible. And if they're in a position to dictate what that can be, they'll take it. Now, I don't think actors always understand that they can be working against their own interests by certain things that they want. And I think to a certain extent that's changed. I don't think actors have the kind of power they used to have because there's now too much money riding on things. You know, before when Hollywood was making movies that were less than $100 million, you could allow an actor to wield a lot more power. But on movies that cost more than $100 million, there's just too much. You can't let an actor dictate. You can't have that kind of thing. You have to have people that really know what they're doing. But that's why. I mean, they're front and center. They're protecting their image. So, yeah. Anyway, Sean M. sends in a super chat and says, I think DS9 did take ideas from Straczynski. Fortunately, not the style of writing dialogue. Yeah, Straczynski's dialogue was never the best, and I think his humor was a little heavy-handed. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls from across the 28 known galaxies, however you identify, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for supporting this channel. I want to thank you for sending me letters. I want to thank you for sending me tips and super chats and supporting the channel in that way. And I also want to thank you all for being a great community. I am going to end this episode number 497 of Robservations. My God, there's 98, 99, and then there's supposed to be 500. I'm not really prepared for 500. I mean, I guess I've set myself up making sure it's a big story. I mean, you know what I was thinking about, actually? I was thinking about more than anything else, making the 500th episode of this show more about you guys and girls and gentle beings and however you identify. The fans, the community, the Post-Geek Singularity. Rather than me interview a lot of people that aren't really part of this community, I can do that. I'm going to start doing more of that. And maybe I'll have a few interviews. But, you know, I would encourage not just letters, but send videos. Even if it's just yourself, if you want to say hello to me or whatever. But, you know, maybe if you could send me videos and share something about yourselves. I don't know what that is. I know it's hard to be on camera and whatever, but maybe we should make the 500th show first of all, I can't believe I've done 500 of these shows, honestly. And the only reason I've been doing 500 shows is because of all y'all. And I would be most curious to hear and make the 500th show about you. So if you haven't written a letter to me, maybe write a letter. It doesn't have to be long. You know, what's it like? What does it mean? Here's your thesis statement. What does it mean to be an imagination connoisseur in 2020? Moving forward, we have an election coming up. We've got COVID happening. The world has been changed from what it was, say, a year ago. I'd be curious. What is your status as an imagination connoisseur? How do you feel about the future? How do you feel about the present? And maybe write in and share that. And I'll read all these articles and I'll read these letters or whatever. But that's what I'd like to hear. I'd like to hear from you guys for the 500th show. And if you want to send me videos, you can do so. If you want to send me letters, if you go to the Burnettwork.net website, on the top right corner, there's a link. You can click on it. And you can send me your letters. Tomorrow is a 4-show day. I will be on the John Campea show. I will be with Heel versus Babyface and we continue our look through The Prisoner. Tomorrow we are doing A, B, and C. So if you want to watch the Prisoner episode and follow along with us, that's what we're going to be doing. I should be back for Robservations tomorrow, I think. And then we are doing Whining About Movies tomorrow at 7 o'clock. We are doing Swallow, the movie Swallow, for our 69th episode. Ha ha ha. So there we are. I bring episode number 497 to a close. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, oh, wait, you know what? Before I say goodbye, I would like to thank my moderating staff. I would like to thank, look who's here today. Robert Pariso's here. Joshua Levesque is here. Is anybody besides you guys? I don't know, but the Richard is, of course, here. And the Richard, The Richard is the man with the plan. He's always running the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page and Zoom parties and watch parties and all of that. And the Whining About Movies Facebook page. So all of those things, go find the Richard. Tell him I sent you. So there you go. And thank you for being here. And so comes to an end Robservations episode number 497. My God. And thanks very much. And as always, have a better day.